For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh. Revi. On the talking point today, we're discussing Maldivian President Ibrahim Solih's visit to New Delhi with Sathiya and Dr. Gulbin Sultana. Joining us from Chennai is Sathiya, a policy analyst and commentator. Mr. Moorthy, thank you so much for your time. Good evening.
Thank you.
From Delhi, Dr. Gulbin Sultana. Good to have you on StratNews again, Dr. Sultana.
Thank you.
Mr. Moorthy, on the defense and security front, there have been more announcements. A second landing assault craft, another naval vessel, 24 other vehicles for the MNDF. So the momentum between India and Maldives on that front is continuing despite the India out or India military out campaign back home in the Maldives.
Yes, definitely. So I think President Solih has taken bold to do that in an election year. Rather, this is a commitment of the election year, so to say, for his re-election, because he has now announced his interest to contest also, which means he is taking bold and counting on his people to accept this reality. It's the only thing about Maldives. For long they have agreed among themselves what would be the current mood and trend of politics, that they has given their maritime area, maritime issues and internal security issues in recent times, thanks to Islamic extremism, etc. They are not in a position, they don't have the resources to secure the nation. One. Two, including human resources, right? So they need an external player to be of assistance, help to them. And general mood in all our neighborhood, including Sri Lanka. I know for certain these two nations discussed it about a decade ago, the appropriate levels, and concluded that they don't want to encourage extraterritorial military presence per se, but they need to secure their water, skies, and everything from external threats. And given their limited resources and the massive needs and all that, they thought their interests and concerns will coincide, or India's concerns and interests will coincide with those of theirs. And hence, there is a general acceptance by the state actors, independent of the political leadership, that they have to work closely with India and defense and security matters. And this is an expression of that. Rather than extension, continuance. Yes, of course, there were issues when President Yameen was in power. There was a lot of miscommunication, I should say. Otherwise, the general trend has continued, and Solih has taken bold to take this step.
Dr. Sultana, even if you go slightly into the past, the dawn years were given. The dawn year, we have two choppers there. They continue to carry out search and rescue missions. There's the UTF Coast Guard Harbour Development and Maintenance Agreement. Coastal radars have been handed over. So lots going on between India and Maldives on that front.
Yes, definitely over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I'll just come to Moorthy. That's just for Dr. Sultana.
Yes, it's lots been going on because you have to understand, Maldives is a small country and they have a huge maritime area. Now, for their own national security, it's very important for them to, monitor, do surveillance of this huge area, and they need some kind of capacity building. So, in that sense, I think India is providing assistance. You mentioned about setting up of coastal surveillance radar system. It's a very important for improving the maritime domain awareness of Maldives. their to monitor their area, huge maritime area. Now, an interesting point is that coastal surveillance radar system. And India and Maldives has also signed a white shipping agreement. So now that those coastal surveillance radar system, they are linked to the Indian Ocean Fusion Center that is based in Gurugram. So that has improved their maritime domain awareness significantly. And now in Gurugram, one liaison officer from Maldivian National Defence Force, they permanently, I mean, he is there all the time, 24/7. So it becomes very if their maritime domain awareness, they have improved. Secondly, this Dornier aircraft you mentioned. Now, the islands are scattered in Maldives. All the facilities, they are there in the capital city or some of the cities. But the commutation between the remote islands and these capital cities, it's a major problem for them, because they have to commute through boat or ferry service. So during at the time of emergency, if there is some kind of health emergency, medical emergency, these choppers, they help significantly to transfer the patients from remote areas to capital city. So though the Yameen, I mean, even in 2015-16 period, we have seen they were against it. In fact, that time they were saying, take it back, we don't need it, we have the capacity. But interaction with the Maldivians, they will say, the common people, that those two choppers are extremely important for Maldivian people, because otherwise they don't have anything. They'll have to rely on the boat and ferry service what they are going. So this thing is still continuing, and they are providing assistance. Then you have to understand the radicalization, terrorism, and violent extremism. These are the major national security concern for Maldives right now. So in that sense, it's also very important for them to improve the capacity of the Maldivian National Defence Force, then police, also in countering terrorism or like de-radicalization. So India is providing assistance in that sense, by providing this kind of, supplying this equipments or providing training, and also constructing security infrastructures and all those things. So it is not only actually assisting Maldives to improve their security, but at the same time, I think also the regional security, it's being also ensured. The regional security is also being ensured. So I think it's a both ways. I mean, it's a mutual. I would say it's not only that Maldives is going to be dependent only on India because of this security cooperation, but it will be a mutually beneficial for both the countries, as well as it will ensure security, particularly in the maritime domain, in the entire region, I would say.
Just taking up from that point, Mr. Moorthy, it's not just bilateral, as Dr. Sultana was pointing out, the whole region. Now, apart from the Dosti and other exercises, the Colombo Security Conclave has been expanded to include Mauritius. Bangladesh and Seychelles are observers and might join in the near future. So it's not just bilaterally that India and Maldives are moving up the momentum.
Very true. See, basically, if you look at it, after the Colombo Security Conclave and Seychelles and Maldives coming in, and the expansion of IOR division of the Ministry of External Affairs, which I think is also maybe replicated in the Indian Navy structure, Indian Ocean region in these parts has become an Indian part or a South Asian part. From Seychelles, Mauritius, then Sri Lanka, Maldives, and coming up to India. So, one, there is a greater acceptance among all these stakeholder nations that they have to secure themselves together and try to keep outsiders, as I was mentioning earlier. So, India is at the fulcrum of this Colombo Security Conclave, and it is going to have an impact over the medium and long term too, to ensure that the security of this region is not threatened from outside. That is the idea. And you can, in a way, say that it is also capacity building for Maldives to reach that level or take its share role in this context also. But of course, mainly it is also to take care of its security interests. That's how it is.
Sure. Excuse me, Dr. Sultana, but added to all this, in among those 6 MOUs that were signed this time around, there's one on cyber security as well.
That is also very important because, as I mentioned about that radicalization and terrorism, is a very serious issue in Maldives, and the kind of radicalization, and we have seen that so many Maldivians gone to Syria and joined IS and IS, and that was basically done with social media and all. So and if I'm not wrong, I think per capita wise, largest Maldivians are actually using social media and all. So there is a high probability of misusing internet or social media and all. So in that sense, I think crime, cyber security is extremely important for Maldives. And but the capacity building, I mean, it's very important for Sri Lanka. And I think this cyber security is also a part of, because India and Maldives, they are cooperating in this counterterrorism and violent extremism and de-radicalization process. One working group is also been formed, and they have already had one meeting, I think, in 2021. So I think cyber security is also a part of their plan where they can cooperate. So that way, I mean, this I will say that as a whole cyber security, because everything is not everything, but many things are going digitalized and all, and basically because of this national security issues, capacity building in the cyber domain is very important. So in that context, I think the current MOU is an important step.
Let me just welcome one of our viewers, Ogaru, who says, very interesting, two good friends on board, especially Dr. Sultana and Dr. Moorthy. He or she says that. But just coming back to our discussion, Mr. Moorthy, this India first versus India out. Now, what is the genesis in your mind of the India out campaign? Is it marginal? How are both sides, that is India and the Maldives administrations, the governments, dealing with it? Why does the Maldives need presidential proclamations and laws?
India first policy is the policy.
No,
The
India out.
No,
What is the genesis of that?
No. India first policy is the policy of the government. This was the policy, though not. Let's say, for instance, if you take India's neighborhood first policy, the coinage was not there, but it was always the case. Likewise, India first was also Maldives policy at heart, but it got a particular restraining now under President Solih. But India Out campaign is basically a political campaign of a particular political party, right? But every average Maldivian knows that India is doing a lot for this nation, pre-COVID, post-COVID, during COVID, and all that. So they are alive and aware of those things. So India Out campaign for them is a little, they are unacceptable matter. But at the same time, India Out campaign also we have to remember, if for some domestic reason in Maldives that campaign has come closer to power, this will become a play that we have to remember.
Absolutely. We could discuss a little further. But again, Dr. Sultana, why does the Maldives need these presidential proclamations or laws against India? May not be mentioned directly, but in that case, just out of personal experience, when I look back at the MDP in opposition, it was top class in terms of putting its narrative out using social media and other media. Has it lost that when in government, not being able to put forward positions, its policies, and why, like Mr. Moorthy is pointing out, the Maldivian people are actually gaining?
My personal view is probably, I mean, it's, as an Indian, we should be happy that government has taken action, some steps that would provide India's interest and all. But my personal view is probably president could have avoided it. because it raises lots of other issues also, like freedom of speech and all. So I think the India Out campaign or any kind of propaganda against diplomats and all, there are, I think, other ways to deal with those issues. Government could have done it other ways. So in my personal view, probably it could have been avoided. But since it has been done, now I think it's up to government of Maldives to see that they maintain the freedom of speech and all, so that it's very important. Maldives is a democratic country. They should not follow what happened during 2013 to 18, that suppression of media, or undermining democratic rights or human rights and all those issues. So I think it's very important to balance all these issues at the same time, protecting interest with other countries, or the protecting the rights of diplomats. So it's very important to manage that balance.
Mr. Moorthy, domestic politics in the Maldives, and theoretically, we are all taught in international relations that domestic policy affects foreign policy. But in this case, the presidential elections, as you mentioned earlier, President Solih has finally spoken about wanting to stand for a second term. Now, a lot of dirt is being thrown around, as we know President Nasheed's ambitions were always known. Your reading of the internal dynamics and how that could affect policy?
So there are multiple angles to the internal dynamics. One is, of course, the problem within the MDP that was always there after 1 year after Solih became president. When President Nasheed's ambitions became clearer by the day. Now it has come to a stage where personal accusations, abuses, that has nothing to do with politics, but everything to do with the laws and religion, are being thrown at each other in quick succession. That is unhealthy politics, but in the case of Maldives, a nation that was a young democracy, starting off as a multi-party democracy only in 2008, a lot of people voted for MDP in huge numbers and for democracy otherwise. Because even in the first election of 2008, though Nasheed and MDP represented democracy, there were at least 2 other candidates who voted substantially for a pro-democracy platform. They transferred their votes to Nasheed in the second round. That is how MDP and Nasheed came to power. But many of these constituencies, particularly the non-committed voters among them, I understand, are getting increasingly disillusioned. One, with the way MDP is handling itself, to the way democracy is being exploited and getting a bad name for itself. So there is a dynamics working there. That is something that is we have to watch. The Maldivians will have to watch with concern, particularly the last week. There's dirt and all that. That is very embarrassing for a lot of Maldivians themselves. And I would not be surprised, though I would not wish it on them, because the whole poll percentage for the presidential election would come down from the national average of above 90%. That becomes very difficult for them to predict elections. And I hear from a lot of friends back there, I won't vote. I want to retire from politics. There is at least a couple dozen friends who could afford it say, I don't want to live here anymore. This is all bad politics. And it doesn't convey a healthy mindset of the politics. And this is where Dr. Gulbin Sultana was repeatedly talking about radicalization. If in other nations, frustrated youth take to left-leaning ideology or right-leaning ideology, fundamentalism of either kind, in Maldives it will be religious fundamentalism. That we should not forget. And the politicians in Maldives have to take a great responsibility if radicalization goes there. It is not, if they take to IS or something, it is one, there are external factors like what they think happened in Afghanistan or Iraq or things like that. But in the last 5, 7 years, it is the internal factors that is better. But you should also remember that the first group to rebel against President Mahmoud Gayoom were the religious groups, not the otherwise. So we in India got the MDP message that Gayoom is a fundamentalist, he is promoting radicalization. Actually, it was a fundamentalist group that came up against Gayoom first. So the history of that dynamic is totally different, and this will have an impact. See, for instance, again, in the recent past, it goes beyond MDP also. Thanks to a couple of incidents involving us, India. There is only the Nupur Sharma episode. The other is a Yoga Day exercise. Yoga Day is being observed and celebrated there from 2015. Suddenly, this time, someone goes and bashes up people, right? And the case is on, and that continuance of the investigation, etc., is keeping that news alive with the Maldivian media and social media. That is how the Maldivian government authorities have to consider how to handle it more judiciously. Two, all these things have brought back religion or religious nationalism back to the center stage of political debate from the periphery. Of course, it is not staying up for long, but this cannot, if it cannot continue for too long. For instance, President Solih in his Independence Day address, followed by the address for the Islamic New Year, on both occasions he was focusing more on Islam and nationalism. The fundamentalists call it Islamic nationalism. There is a lot of difference, but he didn't stop doing that. Then there is President Yameen and his PPM-PNC campaign. They have woken up, now I won't say suddenly, but advanced their possible date of announcing his candidacy to the present. When MDP is in a turmoil, excuse me, all of it has created a new dynamics wherein the MDP's allies in particular, whom Solih wants in and Nasheed doesn't want, they are very, very disturbed. Not that they have count much in electoral voting numbers, but unfortunately or fortunately for them or the MDP or the nation, they lend a certain amount of credibility to MDP and Solih wants them to serve. So they are a little upset, disturbed. They are started to make appropriate noises. That is not good news again for the MDP. And of course, thanks the MDP should thank Yameen for declaring that he will not have anything to do with Qasim Ibrahim, who has always contested the past election other than 2018 and has the capacity to transfer the votes to whoever he chooses for the second round, and that candidate has won. Maybe you can say that he is aging, he doesn't have the base. This story I have heard enough number of times from my friends there. Ultimately, he has only increased his vote share from 15% in 2008 to 25% in 2013. So these are the kind of candidates we are looking at. So MDP has to first put its house in order. One, in its own interest. Two, in national interest.
True.
And they have to decide how to handle Yameen. Are they going to go through the court process and depend entirely, because last year the Supreme Court acquitted him in one of the cases. Another case is on trial now. In September, the trial court verdict is expected. Just a month before that, they have announced his candidacy. On August 19, MDP Congress was scheduled. It was scheduled 2-3 months back to meet and decide the next course of action as far as their presidential nominee is concerned. And in a short time, the opposition campaign announced Yameen's name. They have also chosen now the same date, August 19th, to formally announce it in a public rally. It has got a lot of implications, and which means the pot is beginning to boil more than already.
The pot is beginning to boil, Dr. Sultana. This internal division in the MDP, the biggest gainer, as Mr. Moorthy is pointing out, could be the opposition and President Yameen. In that light, just want to put up a question here by a viewer, Kandi, who says, how is India going to manage once Yameen comes back to power, as it is more likely to happen after the next elections? But you get the gist of what this question is and what we've been talking about, Dr. Sultana.
Definitely, there will be, I think, a lot of, it will not be smooth like the kind of India-Maldives relations we can see now. There will be some kind of problems. I would say, like, we had some example like GMR project got cancelled in 2012. So that kind of situation may not arise, even though PPM, the kind of India Out campaign they are spearheading, they might like to take some kind of initiative, some suspension of project, but we have to understand that there is a difference between 2012 and now, because this now India is involved in several projects, large infrastructure projects, and small projects which are directly impacting the people. So in that sense, and particularly post COVID situation, there is an economic repercussion for Maldives. So though even 2012 there were economic repercussion when they canceled the project, GMR project. So and still, even then they just went ahead and canceled the project. But this time around, since there are so many projects, it will not be possible for the Maldivian government, if Yameen government comes into power, to cancel all the project. So they will not be able to do so, but there will be some kind of problems. I would like to give the example. For example, as India Out campaign, they have major issues with three main agreements between India and Maldives pertaining to defense and security cooperation: hydrographic survey, that Dornier aircraft, and the construction of coast guard harbour. So they asked Parliament National Committee to review the project. National Committee definitely clearly have said that no, there is no threat to Maldives sovereignty because of those projects. But then opposition had to agree it, since there was like majority support for the Maldivian problem. But they have said that when if they come in the next parliamentary next elections, they are in the power, they would like to review those projects. So even if, I mean, those kind of problems will be there in India Maldives relations, but then I mean, we have to be prepared for that. So I think that is why, in my view, how to deal with some, since India is investing so much money, India is providing loans and all. So it's very important for India to complete the projects, whatever projects they have already started, to complete on time. Do it, I mean, complete on time, but in efficient manner. So that India doesn't lose if I mean, this kind of situation doesn't arise where there's cancellation of the projects and all. And also, in the post-pandemic period, India is committed to provide assistance to revive the economy, not only in tourism sector, but as Maldivian government is talking about reviving or diversifying the economy by developing fishing sector or agricultural sector. So in these sectors, probably India can think how India can provide more assistance. Ultimately, whichever government comes, even if they don't like India to be there, but then they'll also have to think about their own economy, their own repercussions, economic repercussions. So I think we have to provide assistance, so that even if they want, the stake is too high for to sever any kind of ties they
Sure.
want. That's how we
Mr.
can
Moorthy-
go ahead.
Mr. Moorthy, like Dr. Sultana is pointing out, India has done so much on the economic and development front, but even something that is touted, she mentioned GMR, which was previously, before the Malé Bridge, was the largest private investment. Now, the largest foreign investment is the Greater Malé Connectivity Project, GCMP. Even that, there are questions about why is there this remote launching of it? Why didn't Prime Minister Modi come there if it's a project for the Maldivians?
So it is not necessary Prime Minister Modi has to go, but it could have been done better as used to be done during the COVID era. President Solih in Malé and Prime Minister Modi in Delhi, that would have looked better than the President Solih coming to Delhi and doing it from Delhi. That has sent out from what I hear from friends through the social media. Of course, social media campaigns are political. Still, that message has gone across that Solih has gone to Delhi to do this rather than doing it from Malé. So these are certain sensibilities both sides could have handled with greater care. Now at least they have to start doing it because there is an election out there. And let us not forget, just as Indians have got a sense of Indian nationalism, nationalist pride, every Maldivian has it. I know even rather even before the GMR agreement was signed, I knew they have got what I would call Maldivian national pride attached to the airport for historic reason. So when the campaign started that they were handing over the only international airport to a third country, and there are elements around India, as all of us know, in every nation, that thinks that India is as much enemy, at least 25% of the population, they are made to feel that way. I mean, or convinced about it in ideological terms, not real terms. So these things should be handled with extreme care because GMR agreement did not take into these sensibilities and sensitivities of the local population. That was one of the reasons the opposition, when they launched this anti-GMR campaign, they could get people out on the streets. These were not necessarily just political opposition or religious groups that actually spearheaded the movement, but individuals also who felt strong about their nationalism. And greater the connectivity within Maldives, and greater the knowledge quotient, and greater the social media reach and outreach, these sensibilities and sensitivities are only going to increase, and we should have a feel for the pulse of the common man and not just stop with trying to manage the rulers, which is a very, very difficult do.
Pulse of the people. But Dr. Sultana, India's off late, these post GMR, as you mentioned, are projects or any kind of aid is much different from, say, the Chinese kind of model. It's transparent. It is supposed to be the Maldivians choose what kind of projects they want, where they want the investment, and it goes on like that. But why is that not being translated into, say, an why is that being translated into an anti-India movement? Shouldn't it be the other way around? And is the MDP not gaining from these kind of projects? And just in lieu of that, one more question I'm going to take from Gautam Gunjan, who says, can India's people-centric investment in Maldives stand in front of Beijing's checkbook diplomacy? Dr. Sultana.
Here, I think your question also and this question also. The thing is, that is why I have mentioned that it's very important for India to finish the project efficiently and on time, because this anti-India campaign, India Out campaign, it's actually, in my understanding and personally believe, and Dr. Sathiya Moorthy has also mentioned about it, it's basically a political campaign. I mean, of course, India is targeted, but they also have a political aim in mind to, distribute this MDP government, because their main argument is that by doing signing those agreements, India is trying to interfere, India is trying to have military base in Maldives. And despite knowing all this, Maldivian Democratic Party is joining hands with India. So this kind of arguments they are making. So basically this India out campaign, basically a political campaign. So many people, I mean, I have interacted many of the Maldivians when they say that not many people are actually supporting this India out campaign. PPM or PNC or the opposition leaders, they are they are maybe supporting, but not that all Maldivians are supporting this India out campaign. And as I mentioned, there are like the projects, the high impact community development projects, which are like directly impacting people. For example, street lights or sewerage system, like small projects. So those projects in India, you won't find, when you talk to local people, that they will not say anything against India. And even the India out campaigner, when they are talking about the big military defense and security related projects. They are not talking about the other smaller projects. So the projects, and one good thing about the projects which we have done after 2019 is that many of the projects we finished on time, and we have delivered in efficient manner. I think that is one thing. So this Greta Malé connectivity project also, again, if you read the India out campaigners, their social media posts and all, their argument is India will not be able to finish it, meet the deadline, that is 2023. So it will not be economically lucrative, so it will not be efficient. So they are saying this kind of argument. So it is, I think, in the Afghans company, the project company which is implementing the project, it's up to them to do it efficiently and finish it. And that's how probably we can manage the perception there in Maldives, that we are efficiently doing. And talking about the Chinese that checkbook, China will definitely try to use, because they have the resources. They will try to use it whenever they can. But the thing is that now, post COVID situation, I think many people, the Maldivian also, the common people, they should also learn from the Sri Lankan case, that what China is doing, whether why they are not coming up. Is it so this kind of experience, people are aware now. They will probably look into it. And for smaller projects, though China is also doing those projects, but that competition will always be there. So we'll have to see how we can manage the perception there, how we can deliver better, and that's the way to go about it.
Moorthy, in terms of this India Out campaign now, if it is based on sovereignty, or you said sensitivities, local sensitivities, when there are defense or security agreements, if it's genuine, why aren't there similar noises being made in the Maldives when it comes to, say, the US defense framework agreement?
Who? Is it Gulbin or me?
To you, Mr. Moorthy.
Okay. See, there is a difference between China's checkbook diplomacy and Indian diplomacy. We say it is open, transparent, and all that. China also says at least the Maldivian government, the previous Yameen government, has signed all those agreements with China. And the present government also knows it. And no one in the Maldivian government, for instance, has said it was not transparent. Right? Very rarely has President Solih talked about or against the Chinese agreement. And the only person talking about the Chinese projects from time to time is the foreign minister, Shahid. He has not said anything against the Chinese agreements, and we have to notice that. Others who are not in government may be saying a lot of things. So, one. Two, when the China-India equation comes up in Maldivian domestic discourse, as I was referring to, it is only about the economy, transparency, debt trap, all those things that we are talking about in terms of China. There is nothing called Maldivian political sensitivities, Islamic sensitivities, etc., that have not been imported or reported in the discourse on China compared to that of India. This makes a difference because these sensitivities and sensibilities go deeper down the ragged side of the people, whereas the economic debate stays at the elitist level, at the bureaucratic level, and the diplomatic level. Every diplomat in Maldives may be saying this. Some newspaper editors may be saying this. Politicians may be saying this. But it doesn't go down the thing unless someone is able to connect that to the increased price, inflation, etc. That is not happening. So we have to be very, very clear when we talk about Chinese debt diplomacy or something like that, because we heard the same thing being said about Sri Lanka. It is now being clearly proved that China was only 10% of the total Sri Lankan external debt, just as that of Japan. The difference was in the Chinese projects in Sri Lanka, for instance, were white elephant projects, as they used to write, and people have picked up there. It doesn't create jobs, it doesn't create revenue, it doesn't provide opportunities for the local entrepreneurs to participate. That is the dynamic, that's a different thing. In Maldives, their airport bridge project was the need of the hour, they gave it. Full stop. So let us not over-emphasize on the China factor, other than in the overall construct of the regional security thing. Then there is the argument, if China, US can't come, why not China? This is the dynamics. India as a regional leader, self-styled and accepted. For instance, Colombo Cooperative, this thing, right? Security Conclave. We have to ensure that we lead the local defense thing that will put up a lot of arguments against China or favoring China in the region. It is not just in Maldives or in one country or the other. India has to take the lead in terms of providing economic viability, extending, importing economic viability to individual nations. It could be through multiple ways. They're making rupee a transferable and a transactional currency in the region, though in bilateral terms. Sri Lanka, Maldives, maybe Bangladesh is interested, Bhutan is interested. Of course, Bhutan is there. All these things India should consider multiple ways to increase economic cooperation among us, multiple ways like the Colombo Cooperation, the Security Conclave, but use it very judiciously and in balance to ensure that all extraterritorial powers are kept out of the region and not import our national priorities. There is a national consensus in India vis-a-vis Pakistan and China. That is not the case in other neighbors. Their priorities are different. They want India. That doesn't mean they don't want China. This is our problem. Particularly the Delhi strategic community sees everything from Delhi's perspective and not from an individual regional perspective. See, take for instance Sri Lanka. Everyone in Delhi was saying until day before yesterday, he is pro-India, Rajapaksa or anti-India, etc. Now he is the one, forgetting that the Ranil Wickremesinghe as Prime Minister was the one who handed over Hambantota on a 99-year lease to China. If there was a submarine that came into Colombo port during Rajapaksa's term, today a Chinese research naval research itself is coming to Hambantota port until Ranil. So, of course, he could say that it was agreed upon by the previous government, but he may still have the veto power. But he is not exercising it because their national priorities are different. We have to understand that. Unless we are able to do that, and devise policies and priorities accordingly. This kind of conflict of interest between nations vis-a-vis individual leaders or individual political parties will continue to be hampering our bilateral relations, not just with Maldives, with every regional nation, because they want India. They don't want any particular nation, whether it is China, Pakistan, US. They would like the freedom to act and react with two nations in the best of their national interest and not necessarily the best of India's interest. That we have
True.
to understand.
And everybody would want it in their interest. Dr. Sultana, if you want to quickly just wrap up your thoughts on where we are, that is India and the Maldives currently, and where we should be moving towards.
Right now, I think we are in, compared to our relations with several other countries, I would say that India Maldives relation is in much better place. But I think we have to be very careful. We should not be complacent. Because we know that given the domestic dynamics, the political, I mean, there may be change of government, there may be political change in Maldives, and we have to be very careful, and we have to think about and prepared for, and we have to see what we can do, so that even if there is a government change, the bilateral relations do not get much affected. Because it's very important. It's not only that we need to have a good relations with our neighbors, but it's a matter of a national, not only national security, but also as a whole regional security. And also it is very important, and we have invested so much. Our security is also involved. So keeping the bilateral relations, keeping the mutual benefit in mind, I think we have to we have to see how we can kind of i- um, enhance our cooperation. And I think we should try to somewhere, probably if it's possible, to try to engage with other political parties also, so that even if there is some kind of change in the government, we don't we don't have to be in a position like 2013 to 2018.
I think that's extremely well put. Ties between two countries, and here we're talking about India and Maldives, should be such that they are not dependent on which governments are in power. Dr. Sultana, thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience. And Mr. Moorthy, as usual, a great pleasure having you on StratNews.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night. And to all our viewers, thank you for staying on for this pretty long show that we had. And you saw the scroll that's running at the bottom of your screen. If you want to join our Telegram channel, that will tell you whenever we put up something on our website or our YouTube channel as well. And you can help support us. You have a descriptor in the YouTube descriptor. I beg your pardon, a link in the YouTube descriptor, as well as a UPI QR code that has been flashing on your screen. You've been watching Talking Point on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.